Hi Hinsters, we are back with another one. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back. And if you're new, welcome too. You can check out the description box below, by the way, if you are interested in a reading, astrology or tarot reading, or if you'd like to possibly join my Hinny High Introduction to Spiritual Astrology course starting this June. Check it all out below. And this is going to be another very quick request video response. And by the way, if you have any request video ideas, put them in the comments below and I will add it to my list if it's something that I haven't done already. Do check out my older videos if you're new and see if I have or haven't already kind of touched on your curiosities. But today's topic, and the moon is in Capricorn right now as I film this one, so it's quite apt to be kind of talking about this, but this is a question about the moon opposing Saturn in the birth chart. So moon, Saturn, opposition. Very briefly, quickly again, then first of all, I also want to say that there's so many different ways that each of the planets express themselves, the gods express themselves in any given house of our birth chart. And so anything I say is really just an example, especially because I don't even have your birth chart, right? All I can do is give some, like a droplet of the lunar expressions and a droplet of the Saturnian expressions and tell you a tiny bit about the opposition itself. And really, that might not be how it is for you. But I guarantee it will always be a lunar Saturn oppositional expression, always. So wherever you have a lunar Saturnian opposition, or if you have a lunar Saturnian opposition, it's going to be moony, it's going to be Saturnian, but it's not, first of all, it's not going to be every single one of the possibilities of the moon and Saturn, no, but it's going to be somewhere. And sometimes we need to just study what the moon, this goddess, is, what Saturn, this god, is, all the stories and the archetypes, and really know what it is, and also look at the patterns of those planets as they transit our charts and how they speak to us in our lives. And only then can we really get a feel for what these gods even are. And yeah, anyway, let's get on with it. So what is the moon? Very briefly, the moon is things like maternal figures. The moon is wiles and desires. It's the ebb and the flow of fortunes. Saturn, what is Saturn? So Saturn is things like father figures. I just mentioned the sun, which is also associated with father figures in astrology in my previous request video that I just did. And the Saturn, yes, the god Saturn, is also often associated with father figures. And also Saturn is associated with things like, or the ruler of things like melancholy and ostracism. What is an opposition then? So as you might be able to visually imagine, this is an opposition. It is like the moon and Saturn, and they are opposed in the birth chart. We see this. They are opposed, exactly opposite, right? Each other. And also Saturn rules oppositions. So each of the traditional aspects in astrology is actually ruled by a certain planet. And oppositions are ruled by Saturn. So when you have a Saturn opposition, this is extremely important, or even more important, especially if it involves angular houses in your chart. If it involves your first and seventh house, it's very, I guarantee you, 99.999% this is going to speak volumes to you and your life. But yes, Saturn rules oppositions, and some things that we can get from the moon opposing Saturn is big mother father struggles. That's a very common trope, whether we're talking literally the parents, the mother, the father literally struggling or being opposed in some very big way. I'm not talking just about like little arguments that they might have or a little bad patch in their life. I'm talking about this being, for many people, a very deep rooted traumatic theme, or this being a very chronic oppositional theme. So we're not talking about just little things with the opposition. Also, this is like quiet care or knowing better, or like serious caution. We're getting this mix of the moon and Saturn. So people who have this quite prominent, they might have that sort of quiet caution, I want to call it. And they could be very feminine somehow, because both of these planets are very, very feminine, divinely speaking. And another thing that this can bring is a melancholic desire, seesawing. So the seesawing of melancholic desires, manias, even these sorts of things can be very prevalent with the Moon Saturn opposition. But because it's an opposition, oppositions are kind of like tugs of war, where at any given time only one side can win. There's always a winner and there's always a loser with the opposition, and it is often considered the most difficult of the traditional aspects in astrology, the most challenging, and quite often we just have to surrender to what the opposition is delivering. And sometimes life is like that, right? You can't always get what you want, and you can't always win battles, and sometimes you just have to take an L, right? So yeah, things like seesawing, melancholic desires. And I have this placement natally in my own birth chart. I have a Cancer moon rising opposing my Saturn in Capricorn in the 7th house. So I'll just give you a tiny bit of my own experience. If you have this as well, let me know in the comments. Or if you have, doesn't have to be 1st and 7th house, if you have an opposition of this kind in your chart, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know how it's showing up for you in your life and which houses Saturn and the moon are activating in this oppositional way in your birth chart, in your life. So I barely knew my parents, really. I was separated pretty much from a very young age from my birth mother. I have very, very, very few memories, like less than 5 memories, I think, of my birth mother. And I was also very estranged and separated from my birth father from later childhood, and was raised pretty much by my stepmother for most of my life. And my father used to physically beat me up quite severely. And I remember one time when I was a kid, we were in the bathroom and I was crying. I don't remember what it was about, but I was crying, and I think he was angry or just wanted me to shut up and punched me in the face. And I started bleeding. Obviously, my nose started bleeding. Yes, I remember that. And one time I remember he was angry again, and I was trying to like walk out of the room or walk to school or something. And he kicked me in the back of my legs and I buckled, and that kind of thing was an occurrence in my childhood. And Saturn also rules things like the sullen and sorrows, and having my moon in my 1st house, because the 1st house is who you are, what you are, having this very intuitive, receptive, passive goddess in your 1st house, being a moon rising person, it does make you hypersensitive and makes you pull in a lot of just what's going on around you. And I remember you often just like seeing my birth father like standing up in the room, looking out of the window at nothing. I think for a long time as well he would do that, and I always wondered like um what he was thinking so deeply about, what he was looking at. I never spoke to him about it, but it was like I always kind of wondered like what is so sullen or sorrowful, or um what has him so pensive in that way. So yeah, there's some things that I kind of just reflected on with my own Moon Saturn opposition in my personal birth chart and life lot. And let me know how this opposition plays out for you. And I'll see you in the next video. All the best and have a lovely hump day.